Wabi-Sabi in the Orchard, a story of finding beauty in imperfection. A crab apple flower essence story. Have you ever stared at something ordinary, so ordinary you'd almost miss it, and suddenly felt it staring back at you, quietly telling you the truth you've been avoiding? That's how it began with Mara, with a crooked little tree outside her window. Mara lived in an old farmhouse at the edge of town. The siding was weathered white, the porch steps creaked but held. Inside, scuffed wood floors and faint wall marks told stories of a life lived simply. It was a house that never asked for compliments, but never gave a reason for shame either. Some days the ordinariness comforted Mara. Other days it mocked her, as if her life, like the house, was destined to stay unnoticed. Upstairs, canvases leaned against the walls of her studio. She brimmed with ideas. Skies, blossoms, light on wet pavement after rain, the shifting colors of a sunset. But she couldn't finish them. The smallest mistake, a crooked brushstroke, a color mix too muddy, would swell in her mind until the whole canvas seemed ruined. Her mother had been gone for 2 years now. When she was living, Mara would call her in from the orchard to look at her work. Her mother, still smelling of cinnamon and soil, would smile and say, "You've caught the mood, not just the image." Now, there was no one to soften Mara's self-criticism, just silence. The orchard out back held a row of bent, loyal apple trees, and the crab apple tree closer to the house, next to her window, smallest of them all, bloomed each spring as though determined to prove something. One April morning, Mara noticed it differently. She was standing at her window, scrolling through flawless photographs on her phone, polished kitchens, glowing faces. Her own life felt dull in comparison. Then her eyes lifted. Outside, the crabapple tree shimmered with blossoms. Not perfect ones. Many petals were nibbled by insects, others browned by rain. And yet, together, they glowed like a cloud lit from within. For the first time in weeks, Mara felt the knot in her chest loosen. The next Saturday, she walked into town. At the co-op, tucked between jars of honey and rows of teas, was a shelf of flower essences. Mara rarely noticed them, but today one label stopped her. Crabapple. Something about the name pulled at her. Without letting herself think, she slipped the bottle into her basket and made her way to the counter. That night, as she held the small bottle, she noticed the writing on the back of the tiny card tied around the neck of the bottle. For cleansing and self-acceptance, to see beauty even in imperfection. The words cut deep. She added a few drops to her water glass. It tasted of nothing, but something about the act felt tender, like a small promise to herself. Soon Mara began carrying her sketchbook into the orchard. She drew quickly, loosely, before her inner critic could catch her hand. At first, the same scolding thoughts rose up. That petal is wrong. That branch is crooked. But she tried to quiet them, looking instead at the whole. The blossoms weren't flawless, and yet, together, they were luminous. She remembered something her mother had spoken of often, Wabi-Sabi, the Japanese way of seeing beauty in imperfection, impermanence, incompleteness. Once Mara had dismissed it. Now, beneath the blossoms, she felt its truth. One evening while she sketched, Mrs. Grafton called over the fence. "You're out later than usual." Mara looked up, startled. The neighbor stood with a basket of peas, gray hair tied in a scarf. Just sketching," Mara said, a little embarrassed. "Ah," Mrs. Grafton nodded knowingly. "Your mother used to sit out here too, not with a sketchbook, but with her tea. Said it was the best place to feel herself slow down." Mara blinked, warmed and unsettled at once. She hadn't known. After a pause, she hesitated, then blurted out, "Would you like to come for tea sometime?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Mrs. Grafton smiled. I'd love that. They began meeting once a week, sometimes in Mara's kitchen, sometimes on Mrs. Grafton's porch. The mugs were mismatched, the biscuits store-bought, but it was the company that mattered. Mara learned that Mrs. Grafton had once been a seamstress. Mostly hemming pants, mending dresses, she laughed. But I loved it. There's a pride in making something whole again. Her hands, curled now with arthritis, trembled around her mug. I had to stop years ago. Couldn't hold the needle steady anymore. Too much pain. I miss it, though. Mara hesitated. Have you ever thought of trying something else? Something easier on your hands? The following week, she brought a small set of watercolor paints and heavy paper with her to Mrs. Grafton's house. She worried it might seem presumptuous, but offered anyway. You don't have to be precise with these, she said. The colors move on their own. Mrs. Grafton tried. The brush trembled. The paint spread in watery bursts. She frowned. Looks like a child's mess. Or a sunrise, Mara offered. The older woman chuckled. Maybe both. They painted together on quiet evenings. Mrs. Grafton's pages bloomed with wild, unpredictable colors. She laughed more than she critiqued. Funny, isn't it? She mused. When I sewed, I wanted every stitch neat. Now my hand shakes. And look, these little wobbles make the paint bloom in ways I never have planned. Imperfection as a partner. The phrase lodged in Mara's heart. Imperfection as a partner. Soon, Mrs. Grafton's kitchen filled with her experiments. Papers taped to cupboards, drying on the windowsill. She called them crooked rainbows and gave them away, shyly, to neighbors who treasured them. Mara found herself treasuring them too, not despite their looseness, but because of it. They carried the warmth of a woman daring to create anew. By July, Mara's crabapple tree bore small green fruit. Not blossoms, no spectacle, just quiet work. Mara herself had begun painting again, cautiously. Some days she still cursed her mistakes. Other days she surprised herself by seeing them differently, as character, as texture, as life. When the library announced its annual art exhibit, Mara nearly backed out. But Mrs. Grafton nudged her forward. If I can splash paint with these hands, you can hang your paintings. It's time to stop hiding. So Mara did. She hung her landscapes with rough edges, her quick blossom sketches, her once ruined storm sky canvas. Her stomach twisted as strangers leaned close. But instead of criticism, she heard, "This one feels alive. The roughness makes it real." A young woman touched Mara's arm and said, "Something about your paintings makes me feel less alone." Mara blinked back tears. On a warm morning in June, Mara stood at her window again. The crabapple tree, plain and leafy now, bore only green fruit. No blossoms, no glow, and yet she loved it there, in the stage most of all. She thought of her mother, of Wabi-Sabi, of the crooked rainbows pinned in Mrs. Grafton's kitchen. She whispered, "Thank you." She wasn't sure if she was thanking the tree, her mother, or the small bottle of crabapple flower essence. Maybe she was thanking them all. Then she turned to her easel. The canvas before her carried uneven washes of color, pulsing with possibility. She lifted her brush. This time, she didn't stop for the flaws. She painted through them. And when she stepped back, the canvas breathed. It wasn't perfect, and it was beautiful. So that's how it unfolded. One little crabapple tree, a few crooked blossoms, and a few drops of flower essence reminding Mara that beauty doesn't need to be perfect to matter. Sometimes it's the chipped edges and wobbly lines that make something feel real, alive. If this story brought you a bit of calm, or helped you see things a little differently, I'd love for you to subscribe and stick around. There are more stories like this, stories about finding beauty in the messy, magic in the everyday, and kindness in the mere. If you have a story of your own to share, we'd love to read it in the comments. Thanks for listening, friend. Until next time, take a deep breath, and remember, even in imperfection, you're blooming.